Hello, my friends. Hello, and welcome once again to Stately Vaughan Manor, where Roger and I have returned. Because it's Wednesday, that means it's Epic Comic Book Wednesday. Every Wednesday, we'll talk about a certain comic book, graphic novel, or comic book subject. Steve Donoghue over on his channel will talk about the same comic book, graphic novel, or comic book subject. It is our world's finest team up that we do once a week. And this week is a bit unusual. So, we are in the middle of Sumerian September. Actually, we're a little past the middle now of Sumerian September. The reading event dedicated to reading Robert E. Howard's Conan. It's a reading event celebrating Robert E. Howard and his greatest creation, Conan. And this year for Sumerian September, we've been concentrating on pastiche fiction, which is, I didn't realize how dangerous that was. It is fraught with peril reading Conan pastiche fiction, because some of it is, wow. Not some of it's good, but some of it is like, wow, man, who is this guy who's pretending to be Conan? It's been an exercise fraught with peril reading pastiche fiction. And all comic book Conan is pastiche, basically. And today, we're talking about probably the weirdest Conan comic book I could think of from the first run of Conan, anyway. When Marvel got the license back for Conan, and lost it for a number of years, and Dark Horse had it. But when Marvel got the license back for Conan, okay, things got a bit weirder. But for back in the original run of Conan, this issue I'm going to be talking about today was weird. Even as a 13-year-old kid reading this comic book, I thought, wow, this is something. And it actually proved to be, among the neighborhood teenagers who were Conan fans, who I knew that read this comic, and a lot of us read and discussed this particular comic, it proved to be very controversial. So let's talk about this issue of Conan, and you can find it nowadays in this. This is Conan, the Marvel Conan Omnibus, the original Marvel years. Which one is this? This is number 6. This is the 6th volume of the Marvel Omnibus series, and this has Conan stories from the mid-'80s. This is back in the era when Conan always wore the same stinky shirt. He wasn't allowed for a while to go around, just bare-chested for whatever reason. So Marvel, in their infinite wisdom, decided just to have Conan always in the same shirt. Always. He was always wearing this shirt. Eventually, he did get rid of it. Man, he wore that shirt forever. And so, yeah, it was during that era, during the 80s. Let me take this dust jacket off since I'm going to be holding this thing up. This is actually not one of the heavier omnibuses. Move the dust jacket over there. See how handsome that is? So we are going to be talking about this issue. Let me find it here at the end. This is the notorious issue we're going to be talking about. What If, issue number 43. So What If was a Marvel comic book that talked about what if this happened. What if Aunt May became Spider-Man instead of Peter Parker, or, things like that. And every issue, the Watcher and his big Watcher head would show up, and he would tell you a story. He's like, I'm the Watcher. I just sit around in the moon and watch stuff. And let me tell you, if this had gone just a little bit different, wow, how weird would that be? And so today he's talking about Conan. What if Conan were stranded in the 20th century? So there was a previous what if issue where Conan was sent to the 20th century, but he didn't stay there very long. Basically Conan just stayed long enough to run around and hit some cars with his sword, and then he was sent back to the Hyborian Age. And so not much happened in that story, basically. But in this story, okay, now Conan is trapped. He's trapped in the 20th century. You see, he starts off his career here in jail, as you would expect. But he doesn't stay in jail. So Conan, we're going to recap some of the events from the previous What If issue, and it just basically says, okay, so Conan got back, but what if he didn't? What if he were stuck in the 20th century? Well, first of all, he has to get out of jail. So he doesn't have his sword, so he can't kill anybody, which I guess is good. He's dressed up, in his regular convict clothes. I guess that's what those were. And he bursts out of his handcuffs because, I guess Conan can do that. And he just escapes. He jumps up to the window, tears out the bars, and escapes before anybody can do anything. Now, I should mention about this is that this is a Marvel comic book. And in Marvel comic books, even if Marvel was using a character that wasn't their own, even if it was a licensed character like Godzilla or the Shogun Warriors or the Micronauts or Conan, even if they were using a character not their own, if they showed up in their comic books, they existed in the Marvel universe. Everything in the 70s and 80s, pretty much, if it showed up in a Marvel comic book, it existed in the Marvel universe and could interact with the other Marvel characters, which happens in this story. So Conan escapes. Now, Conan is shot during the process of it, and so we get this interesting scene of Conan wandering down the street in 20th century clothes in 20th century New York, because inexplicably, when he was sent forward in time, he just ended up in New York like everybody does. And he has to take care of the bullet in his arm, so he breaks a knife out of a pawn shop, escapes the owner who has a shotgun, and on a roof there, he just digs the bullet out of his arm. No problem. He's Conan. He could do that sort of thing. Patching it up, he'll just wrap his torn shirt around it, which is what he does. So Conan is now trapped here. He doesn't know the language. He doesn't know anything. So what does Conan do? Well, he turns to a life of crime, because Conan, if you recall, when he was a young Conan and had just showed up in Civilization for the first time, he did become a thief for a long time. Conan is kind of an unscrupulous character. He's not, your average hero. And so, the first thing he does is he mugs somebody. He learns about the ways of crime in the 20th century, and he learns the importance of money, even paper money, which he doesn't recognize right away the first time he shows up in the 20th century. And he just mugs people, and he starts to become a petty criminal. And that's what he does. He becomes a petty criminal. Now, one thing about Conan, and this is true, is that he's very, very good with languages. He learns languages quickly. So all across the Hyborian Age, he usually knew a language that somebody else knew. So he uses that skill here in the 20th century to learn English, which he does learn fairly quickly. And gets a job in a bar and starts rising in the ranks of crime. So he just becomes, basically a criminal. And there's this woman that he knew the first time he was in the last issue of What If, and she helped him get back to the Hyborian Age, if I'm remembering correctly. But in this version, he didn't get back. But he still wants to see this lady. So he goes to visit her, and this was the first controversial thing that was really like, what the hell, that us little teenage children were surprised by in this comic book. So this is Conan. That's Conan there. The one dressed like a pimp. The one with the pet leopard. Why does he have a pet leopard? I guess that's what pimps had in 1984. He's dressed like it's 1974, but I don't know, maybe that's just a look that pimps carried on. So this woman is not too impressed with Conan dressed like a pimp. And so I guess he decides that this is not the outfit for him. Eventually he decides, you know what, I'm going to organize my own street gang. That's what I'm going to do. So he goes to the local gym, finds this big guy, and says, you know what, you're going to be my street gang lieutenant, basically. I'm creating my own gang. And he's like, go jump in a lake, Conan. And so he has to fight this guy. And he fights him. And he organizes his own street gang. So now Conan is the leader of this street gang. And so he's the leader of the street gang. Now if this was not obvious by this point, I forgot to mention, but this comic book is not written by Roy Thomas and not drawn by John Buscema. So Peter B. Gillis did the script for this. Bob Hall did the pencils. And so it's basically, Bob Hall did the pencils and the inks. I don't know why he split up the credits. But so it's basically a Peter B. Gillis, Bob Hall production. I'm not sure that Roy Thomas would ever take Conan in this direction, but here he is. He's one of the warriors, basically, from that old movie. So he becomes the leader of a street gang, and they become very successful. Conan just never changes, no matter what century he's in, apparently. And so they're having a wonderful time being criminals. But you keep this kind of thing up, you keep being a criminal, eventually in New York, you're going to run into a superhero. And what if that superhero happens to be Captain America? What if Conan, who now is wearing a sword again, because it is his weapon of choice, what if Conan runs into Captain America? That's interesting. So here is the next really controversial thing among us neighborhood teenagers when we first read this issue. It wasn't weird enough that Conan was dressed like a pimp for a while. Now Conan is fighting Captain America. Captain America is going to stop Conan from robbing this place. So he shows up and he throws the shield at him, and Conan blocks the shield with his sword. And they have a battle. So now we get to see Conan fighting Captain America, which admittedly is pretty cool in its own way. So two of my favorite characters who never should have shared a room together ever in any universe are here battling. So Captain America fights Conan. Who will win? Place your bets. Who do you think's going to win, Roger? Well, the outcome of this battle is what was so controversial among the children, or the teenagers, whom I associated with back in 1984. And there were a lot of arguments that proceeded from what happened here. So Captain America and Conan are fighting, and it's a pretty good fight. As comic book fights go, Captain America is fighting Conan. Conan's really giving Captain America a run for his money. But eventually Conan's had enough of this Captain America character. Can't you see I'm trying to rob this place? It's really difficult to be, a criminal here in the 20th century. So then this happens. Conan slips past Captain America's guard and slices into his shoulder with an injury that pretty much should put Captain America out of commission basically forever. You ever notice how in comic books and TV and movies and every place, shoulder injuries are like no big deal? People get shot in the shoulder all the time, and it's like, thank goodness I didn't get hit any place serious. Now you get an injury like that, you can't lift your arm anymore. you're going to require a surgery or 2 or maybe 3. And if you're lucky, you'll be able to do this again. But probably not. Shoulder injuries like that are serious. Conan knows this. That's why he got him in the shoulder. And Captain America's like, God damn it. And Captain America, he loses. Conan escapes. He escapes from the police again. But Captain America has had time to talk to Conan. You know, before Conan takes off. He says, "You're not an evil man. I can tell. You have a sense of honor, even nobility of a kind. Why do you fight against society instead of for it, as we do?" And so basically, by the end of this, Captain America is basically inviting Conan to join the Avengers. And I always expected a sequel where Conan joins the Avengers, because at the end of this comic book, he's kind of sitting around by the phone. Because Conan just gets away with all of his criminal behavior in this, you know. And that outcome where Conan defeats Captain America, that was the point of controversy. Because many of the kids that I hung out with just couldn't believe it. Even Conan. Could even Conan defeat Captain America? Because most of us felt, who had been reading Captain America forever, that if you were just a regular guy, unless you had superpowers, you couldn't beat Captain America. You know, he was just too skilled, and he had his invulnerable shield. And there's a point in this fight where, like, Captain America cracks Conan across the head with his shield, and Conan's just like, whatever. I always kind of liked the idea that Conan won, you know, because he's Conan. And if anybody who's not a superhero can defeat Captain America, I thought it should have been Conan. But yeah, that was the point of controversy. You know, would Captain America actually lose? Well, we had it right there in a Marvel comic book. And that was, I feel like, to me, and I've always kind of felt this way, that was the weirdest Conan pastiche ever. It wasn't the worst. And, you know, it was kind of funny at times, you know, Conan dressed like a pimp. And it's kind of easy to dismiss because it is just a what-if issue. And what-if issues just tended to be really, really weird. I mean, literally, Aunt May did become Spider-Man in a what-if issue. So, you know, it didn't really happen. But it's one of those stories that caused such a ruckus amongst us teenagers that I've never forgotten it. Even though probably it should have been forgotten. As a comic book, it's not great. But the fight at the end with Captain America almost saves it, because it is a pretty good fight with a really interesting outcome. But that is one of the odder Conan stories that you'll find out there. Like I said, when Marvel got the license back again, much stranger things happened. Let's just put it that way. But I guess I'll shut up now. That's all I have to say for today. I probably won't be back until Sunday because things are crazy here at the Manor, but I will catch you next time.